Houdini sought to communicate with his beloved mother after she passed on, but he found no evidence that he could rely upon. The Houdinis always believed that in their search, if you remove the fraud, what is left must be the truth.
So today I'm going to be talking about something that seems almost contradictory to itself. There's a man that is kind of popular in culture. He has been for many, many years. He was known as an illusionist, a master of sort of boggling the mind and going toe-to-toe with death for the entertainment of himself and the masses. Half of his audience believed that he was a perfect example of someone who knew how to boggle the mind and play tricks. The other half actually believed that he had magic. The man I'm talking about is Harry Houdini.
Be prepared to be captivated.
What most people don't know about Harry Houdini is that he would actually go around playing the Skeptic at a lot of other different kinds of illusionist performances, which basically involved a lot of people who believed that they could speak to the dead. During Houdini's time, spiritualism was very, very big. A lot of people believed in it, a lot of people thought it was bullshit, and Houdini was somewhere in the middle, but he was very into finding fact and finding the fake. This also involves another person, a celebrity of the time, who we also all know, and we love his characters. His characters are still very predominant in pop culture today. I'm talking about Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who wrote Sherlock Holmes. He was actually on the other side of the spectrum, where he fully believed in everything from spiritualism to the fairy photos of Cunningham, all that kind of stuff. If he couldn't see the physical reasons as to why it was happening, he believed in it 100%. Now this showed a very strange relationship because they were friends, and it's a very compelling part of history that you don't really hear about, especially about Houdini, the handcuff king, who is known for tying himself in straitjackets and going underwater and all that stuff. So before I talk about Harry Houdini during the time where he was friends with Conan Doyle, I want to go back and talk about the time when spiritualism first began, the very beginning. So back in 1848, there were these two little girls, the Fox sisters. You know, like normal little kids, probably had secret codes, help each other get the cookies out of the cookie jar, that kind of thing. Oh, and you know, they also performed seances and would actually contact the dead. These two little girls said that they could contact spirits using raps, taps, crackling, like crack noises, that kind of thing. And people believed them. In fact, they were so popular that they would fill up stadiums worth of people. And by stadiums, for us, I mean like theaters. They would travel around the states. For 40 years they did. During this time, spiritualism just exploded. Like, it was everywhere. People were always trying to perform seances, contact old relatives, that kind of thing. People who passed on, ghosts that they probably didn't even know. They just wanted to contact the dead because it was this sort of marvel of the time. And from a young age, Houdini did sort of get that they were playing a trick on people. And so he actually picked up a book about how to do seances and do those kind of like spooky sort of effects and stuff, which I thought was really clever for a little kid. And as he went on through life, he would first start off doing illusions of seances with his wife. So he sort of knew coming from a young age about these different kinds of illusions, and that was his first upcoming into illusions. And then of course he would go into doing a lot more drastic stuff than pretending to contact spirits in his house with his wife. But you know, the thing is, after 40 years, the Fox sisters came out and said, yeah, no, we were just cracking our ankles under the table. There were people knocking. They made it up. They weren't real psychics or mediums or anything. But 40 years of spiritualism brought it to such an all-time high that there were others that people would be like, oh, but this person's legit, so we'll go to them. Probably not in those exact same words, but you get my drift. There's this sort of like novelty of spiritualism, this sort of like, it took over pop culture, it took over society. Everyone was believing in it. Well, almost everyone. In July of 1913, Houdini's mother passed away from a stroke. Actually, he was so devastated that he was actually doing a show in Copenhagen at the time, so when he was informed of the news, he fainted. He fainted from grief. That was how devastated he was. He loved his mother immensely, and she loved him and her daughter-in-law, and he loved both of the women in his life so much. So, like most people going through grief, he turned to one way to maybe do that final goodbye. Houdini went to a medium, and then another, and then another. But each time he would go to these people, he could tell that they were faking it. You gotta remember, he's been studying these acts since he was a little kid. So he could sit there and be like, "You're not contacting my mother. You're lying to me right now." And so he would go to these mediums and he would be able to point out, it's like there's somebody in that closet knocking, or this is by tripwire, or that kind of thing. Like, he was on top of his game